Hello, we're from Barnet, Barnet Alliance for Public Services. We've come to support the health demo because we think people should support any demo to defend health services. We'll be defending the health services in our area as well. We've come to tell you about Barnet Spring, our march on 23rd of March. We'll be marching against the cuts and against privatisation. Because in Barnet, the council wants to give most of the council services to Capita. We'll make money out of our services, cut our services, make staff redundant, make staff
worse in their conditions,
take less pay. Anything else?
Well, the big concern as well is actually the effect this is going to have on local democracy when services are tied into 10-year contracts and there won't be much room for manoeuvre for local elected councillors to have much say through, representing their constituents about what happens to the shape of public services. And in addition, the council is also, on the back of this, is also diminishing the representation for the workforce to have any say in how the services are shaped through their cutting their facilities for trade union representatives. So there's a big assault on local democracy in all shapes and sizes as far as we can see it.
Come here.
I'm in Barnet Unison.
Hello, I'm from Barnet. I'm not happy about what's happening in Barnet. I'm not happy about what's happening around the country. The coalition government is destroying and dismantling everything that matters. What's happening in Barnet is happening in each and every borough around the country. That's to do with all the cuts that the government's imposing on the local authorities. And Barnet thinks that Barnet has a Tory majority and they can basically push through what they like, and that is exactly what they're doing. They're privatising all 70% of public services in the borough of Barnet and signing it to a 10-year contract, which means the next election doesn't matter because we'll still be trapped up in this contract. If it all falls down, who's going to be there to pick up the pieces? It's a disaster waiting to happen, and they're not putting through. They're not having proper due consideration and due care for the residents. It's all about money and making the rich richer and the poor poorer. The rich don't care if they lose the public services because they don't have to use them.
Yes, and we've been fighting. We've had our campaign for like 4 years now. We've been supporting the trade unions. They've had several days. We've supported the trade unions. They've had several days strike, but we think that the trade unions need to have more strikes, be much more militant against the government. They should be defending services, defending their members' jobs. And so we'll support strikes. We supported the occupation of Friar Barnet Library. That's been inspiration. The community campaign for a couple of years to defend the library, now supported by the Occupy movement and the occupation. And whatever happens, like the legal wranglings of who gets to control the library and whatever, we will go on defending the library service in that library. But we also support the Unisons is currently campaigning to defend professional librarians' jobs. The council wants to cut 20-odd librarian posts and have all the libraries run by volunteers. Now, whatever you think about volunteering, that's fine and everything, but we want a professional library service as well. And we know that they're not doing this because they want volunteers running the libraries. They're doing this because they want to make cuts, and that's what we're opposing.
Well, as far as I see it, taxation is there to fund service and oils everything we need in order to keep society functioning on a reasonable level. It depends on what you describe that reasonable level, but I would say that big businesses and smaller businesses even need for their roads to be tarmacked properly. They need street lighting, they need refuse collecting, they need a fire service to put out fires. You know, this is the underlying structure for what is needed for an economy to thrive. And you know, and it just seems to me bizarre that we can be paying shed loads of council tax, or actually Barnet has put in a council tax freeze, and the polls show residents would be prepared to pay a little bit more in council tax to have better services. But of that council tax, an enormous amount of it is being actually used for consultants and transformers, as I call them, people whose jobs it is simply to sit around thinking, how can we change things? Well, maybe we should be doing things rather than bloody changing things all the time. You know, and they're paid enormous amounts of money. I know of one consultant, up until Christmas, apparently he was being paid over £300 per day, and this was to advise on policies for the council. He requested that his salaries increased to £400+ per day, and the council said, yeah, that's fine. I've got a member who's on part-time wages, really low paid. The increase she's looking for is about £100 in a month, and she's fighting tooth and nail to get that. And whether she's right or wrong, there is just a grotesque difference of inequality which is being affirmed over and over again by this government, reiterated by the council, and the whole policies that they're pursuing. They desire inequality, and the measures they're putting through is nothing to do with austerity. It's about saying it is good to live in a society where the majority have to live in fear for their lives, for their livelihoods, for how they get along, and a minority just cream it up at the top. You know, I mean, it's disgusting. It absolutely disgusts me. There are schools now where they believe, these are normal schools, where children are not being taught by teachers. Now, when I was growing up, every bloody child, you knew you went to school and you had a teacher in front of your classroom, whether they were much cop or not, but there was a principal. And I just don't understand how we're in a position now, one of the richest countries in the world, and we can't have for every child that goes to school a bloody teacher standing in front of the class. What's it going to happen when you go for your heart surgery? Oh, well, your heart's not quite as good as somebody else's heart, so we'll give you a junior consultant or a nurse to do your open heart bloody surgery, and somebody else is going to get a proper surgeon. It's just monstrous and outrageous, and I don't really. The demonstration today was fantastic. This has to take place over and over again in all boroughs, everywhere. We've just got to keep doing this. It's outrageous.
What Wandsworth Borough Council have done is just disgraceful. For that adventure playground, it's all about staffing costs. Dismantle an adventure playground. I mean, have you ever played on an adventure playground? I haven't played on an adventure playground since the one in Crystal Palace. They're few and far between, but they're the most fun things. And to dismantle it, to rebuild a shit one like that over there for £200,000 when you're charging the lowest council tax rate ever, it's all about just making people lose their jobs, pushing them onto the dole, and not having to pay for them anymore. There's no common sense in any of it whatsoever. And the way they've given press releases out, the Occupy movement went in there, it was 80% residents. 86% of residents were against what the council decided to push through, and they continued to demolish it, and they tried to poison the residents' opinions by saying just the propaganda and saying awful things about the Occupy movement, where the Occupy movement were there defending the residents by taking action to defend what the residents wanted, and the whole thing is just happening up and down the country, government and local authorities, and it's just sick. And they're doing it with stealth, and they're doing it sneakily. They're keeping people busy, struggling, living hand to mouth, so they can't even understand what's happening. Just poisoned by the media. None of it's getting reported. Nobody knows what's happening. This isn't just about Lewisham Hospital today. It's about the NHS, far and wide, up and down the country. They're taking it away from us, piece by piece, sneakiness by sneakiness, and it's not right.
I mean, I think the government is trying to divide and rule working class people, and it's finding little points of, where people resent, like people in work who are on low pay, you can try and stir them up against people who are on benefits. Yeah, you can make them despise their neighbour who's on benefits, that disabled person down the road. And I think that's how that's what these benefit cuts are about, is dividing working class people against each other. And we have to stick together, we have to resist that, we have to show solidarity with people that are fighting, like DPAC. They'll look for other scapegoats, but we've got to stay united. And there are working class people who earn a lot of money, and working class people who don't earn much money, working class people on benefits. We've all got to stick together.
We need to fight to get everybody to earn a wage that affords a decent standard of living. Not luxury, but just to live with dignity and pride. So you can't have that divide and rule. So the people are earning enough that they get taxed and they pay, so that those who are less fortunate also have dignity and a quality of life.
I mean, there's just on that. There's people, but there's. I mean, I think people think people with disabilities. The classic image is somebody in a wheelchair, and disability happens to somebody else, but not to your own self. But actually, people are not necessarily born disabled. You acquire a disability, and so the horror or the terror of maybe having a stroke. I mean, we know Andrew Marr has had a stroke. And he will be benefiting right now from intense NHS services, from decent rehab services to try and get him as able as possible back into work. One of the difficulties a lot of disabled people face is about the attitudes of the employer, because all the propaganda is about saying how these people with disability benefits, they don't try hard enough to get in a job. And yet I'm a trade unionist, and I represent too often disabled workers trying to keep their job, because they're on capability hearings, because they're not able to deliver to the level that is expected. And as the work processes are intensified, it means people, on the edges start falling off because they can't perform to that level. And sometimes it's work that makes people sick as well, And it seems to me this government has a lot to say about individuals not being in work. And
there is no jobs for them.
But nothing to say about employers who don't employ people with disabilities. The government has a lot to say about people in flats where they're getting housing benefit at outrageous rates. Yeah, but they have nothing to say about landlords that are ripping off the housing benefit system. You know, they always attack individuals who are completely delivered into the arms of these horrible mechanisms, and nothing to say about the people who create that system, those systems that get people in those states in the first place. And it's the wrong way round. You know, and really, it's as Vicky says, ultimately what they're trying to do is divide and rule. They're not interested in disabled people having jobs. They're not interested in people having a roof over their heads. You know, they just want to, you know, have a go at demonise people, so it makes it easier to attack.
There's just one more angle on it. Is I mean, we've done this campaign against the privatisation programme. It's called One Barnet, the privatisation programme. We've had this campaign for like 4 years. So we've had strikes, supporting strikes. We've had demonstrations. We've lobbied our councillors. We've done everything you can possibly think of.
Took over the town hall.
Took over the town hall for a bit. They're still going ahead with it. So this isn't like the last stage in it, right? But this is a tactic. There's 2 legal challenges to One Barnet going ahead. It's going to be in the High Court on the 18th of March, we think. And those legal challenges have been brought by a disabled woman and on behalf of a woman with learning disabilities. And they're taking Barnet to court and Capita to court because they say when these contracts that you've written fail, Barnet is going to be in the red, you're going to lose money, services are going to fail, and who ultimately is going to pay the price for that? It's going to be the people at the bottom of the pile in Barnet. It's going to be disabled people, people depending on adult social services or children's social services. And so it's disabled people that are taking the legal cases against Barnet and Capita. And I hope everyone will get behind them at the High Court on the 18th of March. Come on our demo on the 23rd of March, because it's not just about Barnet. What we've always wanted to do is to shine a spotlight on all the big outsourcing companies who are quietly getting contracts all over the country, from this council, that council. Often these contracts fail, but that doesn't hit the headlines. So we want Barnet just to be one example of a fight against these outsourcing companies like Capita and Serco, and hope everyone will join in and fight against them with us.
Thank you very much.